and welcome back to Whiskey Politics. And we are back in the Crave News studios. We were here a couple of weeks ago, and so much has happened in just the past couple of weeks. And to talk about that and what's going on in the small business economy is small business owner, profound small business owner, Kent Emmons. We are here back at Crave News, and I understand, Kent, we got the Whiskey Politics, the set here, the bar. It's real, right?
Dude.
You got some good whiskey?
You were one of the first ones ever to drink whiskey at this bar since you're the host of Whiskey Politics. I did. I brought out something really good for you. You know how we like at CPAC, we pulled out a really great special whiskey you had for your birthday, your 50th birthday.
Yeah.
So this, actually one of our the official bourbon of Crave News, Pat Benatar and her husband Spider and Morris Nutt and some other friends of mine own this company. This is an unbelievably great bourbon. This is this is actually out of batch number 15. This is just a great one. It's a really nice rye. So
it's a rye.
It's a rye.
It's called 3-chord?
It is called 3-chord after the chords on a guitar.
Very cool.
Yeah,
so that's Pat Benatar's husband.
Benatar or Nebatar, either one. By the way, those two are freaking amazing. They had at Graceland, they had a bunch of us down to Graceland.
Are you on the rocks?
I'm on the rocks.
Okay.
At Graceland, they did kind of the kickoff for 3-chord, rented out pretty much all of Graceland, and Pat did a concert that was unfreaking believable. This chick, she was hot back when we were teenagers.
Oh, yeah,
she's double hot now.
Yeah.
She's gorgeous,
and she's really well.
Oh my God, she sounds amazing.
And her and her husband are still performing.
Yeah,
we see them. They come to the smaller venues now, but they're doing really, really well.
Spider's freaking amazing.
Yeah,
and they put this thing together. It's an amazing thing. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, well, cheers.
Salud,
Social
brother.
Distancing, cheers, everybody.
That's right. Those glasses didn't clink. That was actually done in post.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is delicious.
They're great.
Oh, this is really delicious.
I'm
Not
guessing
a lot
I
of
could,
burn on the back of the throat.
Yeah.
And this is a rye, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Some great stuff. And we only have about 20 bottles here.
Three chords.
So don't worry about going easy on it.
Yeah. And if 3 chords want to, be an endorsing of the whole Whiskey Politics show here at Crave News,
I guarantee you they will.
All right.
Yep.
Very
guarantee
cool. So it's been a couple of weeks since I was here. I was actually here with Barack Lurie, attorney, and we were talking about the rise of the sex machines, and it was a very timely
His book,
discussion.
by the way, The Rise of the Sex Machines, is great. You got to pick it up. It has nothing to do with actual sex machines, but it is freaking amazing.
And it's a fascinating discussion regarding what's going on right now with, obviously, the lockdown because of COVID-19. I wanted to talk with you a little bit more on a serious note here. I just got through a symposium over the past 2 days for a business purpose that I was involved with, talking to small business owners around the country. You are a co-founder here, or a founder here of Crave News Studios, which is going to just blow up and be huge. Talk to me about what you're hearing right now from investors, small business owners, just the economic indicators of what we're seeing right now because of the result of COVID-19.
Well, I mean, everything is just shut off for any small business. I've had calls all weekend long from friends of mine that were everything from the oil and gas business, small-time oil and gas business, to trucking, to you name it. Every single business is just coming to a halt. I got friends with restaurants down the street here. They've shut down, and they're not going to be able to reopen, even if they've got the quote-unquote stimulus money, which I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Even if they got that today, they wouldn't be able to open up. So there's a lot of issues, and that's just 3 or 4 weeks into this thing.
I want to get deep into the stimulus and the PPP, the payment protection program that they have right now. That seems to be kind of faltering. I'm kind of I guess seeing some of the same things we saw with Obamacare when it got kicked off. Maybe it was just too big for the systems. What are you hearing regarding this?
Let's put it in the context first. You had, this bill that was rushed through, very much like Obamacare was. Yeah. And again, it has nothing to do with Obamacare. None of the issues are the same, really. But it was rushed through last minute and all that kind of stuff by dangling a carrot. So the absolute distraction. So it was a $2.2 trillion bill that was called the CARES. You know how they name the bills, like saving puppies, and it has and it has nothing to do with saving puppies. This bigger one was called the CARES bill, and it had to do with the coronavirus relief, whatever the acronym is. $2.2 trillion, and of course, it was advertised, as the politicians always do. Oh, this is going to go to the people, and blah blah, and everybody's going to get $1,200. Well, when you got people that are sitting there staring down, can't pay not being able to pay their rent, $1,200 sounds pretty good. And these people don't read past the headlines or don't even read the headlines. Their friend told them, hey, they're going to pass this thing and we're going to get $1,200. So this is on the individual level. The interesting part about this is over the weekend, talking with a lot of friends of mine that are in their, late teens in college, or they're in their 20s or early 30s. There's a lot of them are struggling, especially here in Los Angeles. A lot of them are waiters, waitresses, actors, a lot of times waiters, waitresses, and actors. A lot of service industry people, a lot of Uber drivers, people like that, who struggle to pay their rent and pay their bills anyway, hadn't been paid for the last 3 or 4 weeks because their jobs have ended. And unemployment, of course, takes forever for them to be able to jump through those hoops. So this $1,200, I was talking with 2 of my buddies, 2 separate conversations, and I said, well, where do you suppose the rest of the money went? And they said, well, what do you mean the rest of the money? I said, well, it was a $2.2 trillion bill, do the math. And they said, well, isn't that pretty much you divide that up and everybody got $1,200? I said, no, not at all. I said, the $2.2 trillion, by the time it's all done, it's literally 12 to 14% makes up that $1,200 one. And the $1,200, by the way, was promised within 2 weeks, which would be this coming Friday, right?
Yep.
Now they're saying it's going to be 2, 3, 4, and likely 5 months for people to get that, and they have to jump through a bunch of hoops. So again, of that $2.2 trillion, under $300 billion of that is going to individual people. Then they promised on and we'll get to this in a minute, the small business loans, which, by the way, small businesses are the most important industry we have. No matter what the actual industry is, they're the most important employer we have in America. They employ darn near 60 million people, 59 million people.
Yep.
They were promised between $325 billion and $350 billion, and they were promised it right now, starting Friday. So starting last Friday. When all the applications were supposed to go in. And it was also, you look at a bunch of these congressmen, they were talking about it being a one-page application, a very simple one-page application. Now, let's say that the American public, through their $1,200 and their $500 checks, gets at the most $300 billion. Small businesses get $350 billion at the most. That's, $650 billion. What happened to the rest of the $2.2 trillion? Big corporations are getting a lot, which I know a lot of big corporations, especially on the transportation side and things that we rely on. But a lot of it are big corporations who had record earnings last year, who have got retained earnings, who are doing stock buybacks. They're getting a ton of this money. And again, it's kind of mystery money because we really don't know exactly where it's going to go. And that's over 500, almost $600 billion where that's going. And they're already getting theirs. So they're already starting to get their money, which is pretty interesting. Going on beyond that, another $350 to $400 billion are going to state and local governments, which typically are just politicians doing favors to other politicians.
How much of that is going towards unemployment rolls?
None. You've got some. It's kind of interesting. On the flip side of that, there's a lot of flip sides on this bill. They were supposed to have several $100 billion going to unemployment, where you could get up to $600 a week extra on your unemployment. Now, I don't know if you have any friends that have tried this, but the hoops you have to jump through to get that, darn near impossible.
If you can even get onto the sites.
Exactly.
Because they are crashing under the weight of millions of people suddenly finding themselves out of work and needing just grocery money right now.
Right. Now, you run a whole small business symposium. You've got hundreds of small businesses that you work with daily. I mean, literally every single day. What are you hearing about the application process? And I'll walk you through our application process, how it's been. And when I say application, the application to apply for that small business loan that was supposed to be one page and immediate.
And it's important to be specific here because there's different applications. So first, you were talking about unemployment. That's an individual situation. Small business owners have 2 different applications to apply for right now. The different applications are the PPP, that's the Payment Protection Program, where they can get immediate money. There's $10,000 grants that are involved in that right now. They don't have to be paid back. And then there's the SBA 7 loan, which is being, as you refer to as the CARES program, as they call it, CARES program, which is going to be quote unquote forgivable loans as long as you're able to hire back the people that you've let go or keep employees employed. Now, on paper, absolutely the right thing to do, okay? Because the number one issue that we're going to be having right now is economic indicators are pointing to not just a couple of months or a V curve, but the fact that this is going to go on for months and possibly years while people are starving alive. So hire those people back, keep them off the unemployment rolls. On paper, it looks good. What I'm hearing is the application processes are a disaster because they've given it to the banks as SBA loans are done. So you go to your state bank or your national bank, Wells Fargo or a state bank of the state that you're living in, and many of those banks, including Wells Fargo that just announced today that they're limiting their loans at $10 billion, which is nothing.
Right.
Okay. So all of a sudden people are saying, well, wait a minute, I can't even make an application right now. So it's the, let's call it the supply chain problem of getting that money that's backed by the SBA, funded by Congress and the government, actually through to the business owners, because it's the banks that don't want to basically allow themselves to be in a position where they were in 2008, where the FDIC is going to come in and say, oh, you got too many non-performing loans and bad assets, we're going to have to close you down or split you apart and sell you off.
Right. Now, that's a huge bank, Wells Fargo. I'm with a little smaller bank here. It's a little more boutique-y kind of bank that does hire, business guys with a few bucks. So
is that CNB?
It's CNB, City National Bank.
Yep.
Great folks.
Yep.
They give a little more personal touch than a bigger bank like that would. Literally last Wednesday night, when the first application came out, I went over, sat down. Our banker said, hey, come in, let's get this done, because Friday morning we want to make sure you guys, along with our other, clients are, first in line. You guys are, we're turning these applications in. So go over Wednesday, fill it out. It's all set, ready to go. Thursday they call and said, you're not going to believe this. The government changed the application. We got to refill the whole thing out. So I went over there again. Again, this is not the bank's fault. This is the bureaucrats, trying to figure this thing out in a really haphazard way. It's these DC folks. So went over there, did it again, got it done. Friday morning, first thing, I'm heading into the studio. Friday morning, same thing. You're not going to believe this. They changed the application. I go back Friday morning. You witnessed this Friday afternoon. You were in to do a show Friday afternoon, and I literally had to leave the studio to run out to our bank because they changed it again. They changed it, it was 5 times that they've changed it, and apparently they've done it a 6th time, or at least added more stuff you got to put in. So it's an absolute impossibility, and it's just, the whole thing is a big farce. I mean, it really is just a way, kind of like the $1,200. We're going to give you $1,200 in 2 weeks. Well, they never had any intention of doing that. They could have very easily done it. I don't know if you saw Andy Puzder's piece in on the news this weekend.
I did.
All you got to do for that is, 95% of Americans and even, or residents that live here have checking accounts. All you got to do is take your ID. They've got plenty of database information. Take your ID in and, write the check for $1,200 to yourself.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. Not that fucking hard. Very simple to do. Not difficult at all. Same with these small business loans. Every small business has got an EIN. And I think if you make the penalty hard enough, that obviously if you defraud a bank or you lie on an application, you're going to go to prison for a while anyway. So, I think there may be open for a little bit of fraud there. That's the argument. Well, what about fraud? The fraud is so minor. In other words, the fraud that could happen, the possibility is so minor compared to losing millions, and I'm talking actual millions of jobs and small businesses. It's crazy.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the perspective of the time frames that we're looking at now. I think if you watched the administration, President Trump and Mnuchin and those guys, they were getting up and they were saying, this is what small businesses need. I think with the president being a business owner himself, they understand the dire need of small businesses. And as you mentioned, 67% of all employees in the country are employed by small businesses. 2/3.
Yeah.
Okay. So they understand it. But is the problem not so much the intent rather than the bureaucracy?
The intent may be there, and I got to tell you, as you know, I'm a big fan of Trump. Know those guys, love what they do. As far as I'm not a fan of a lot of his, hyperbole, but I'm a huge fan of what he's doing from a policy standpoint and what he's done from a policy standpoint. But I saw him last night on his COVID show, talking about, for the small businesses, this is working out great. And I don't know if, his people are just lying to him or what. I've not heard one story about the small business thing that's not been a nightmare.
Right.
Every single one, and without exception. without exception. It's been a nightmare for him.
Me-
so I
me
don't know.
too.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's getting bad information or they're blowing smoke up his ass in D.C. or whatever, but it has been a really, really bad thing. The worst part about it, though, outside of the business realm, you and I think about it as small business guys because we're small business guys. The worst hoax, I think, of this whole thing, and I do think it's, I don't know that it was meant to be a hoax, but I think here's $1,200 and they vote in this 800-page bill in less than 14 hours from the time it was drafted to the time they voted on it. I don't know if last time you read an 800-page book in 14
you have to
hours.
pass it before you can see what's in it.
Like Nancy Pelosi said, well, we have to pass it before you see it.
Yeah.
And that was the last big disaster bill they did, which was the Obamacare. But, and again, by the way, this is not a partisan thing. This is a people thing.
Yeah.
But the biggest, part of this thing that I think was just a real lie to the American people is you're going to get that $1,200 and you're going to get it in 2 weeks. And they didn't talk about where the rest of it was really going. And it's interesting, we had people on the show earlier today who were just shocked. I had an actress from one of the big movies last year. She had no idea that all the money went to other politicians, went to big corporations who had record profits last year and that kind of, she had no clue.
The Kennedy Centers.
Think about that. The Kennedy Center, this is a place in New York that is not, I've been there many times, and I'm telling you, it is not where common folk go.
No.
This is a place for rich people to go. They buy overpriced tickets.
DC
for
insiders
shows.
to hobnob.
Exactly. And it's a place where people go and it could be the opera, it could be the symphony.
Yeah.
And how do they sneak $25 million into this bill?
So you asked the question on the air earlier today. What was the justification for that, and why wasn't the media jumping on them over this?
There was zero. And by the way, whether you like the Kennedy Center or NPR, which also got a lot of money, whether you like them or not, this has nothing to do with that. This has to do with people are hurting. Now let's get back to the real crux of this thing, because here's where I think the stuff really goes down. You've got families out there that are stuck in their homes. Now they're not even going to get that $1,200. The average family in America, it costs them $3,000 a month to operate, whether it be rent, house payment, primary car payment, insurance, utilities, all that kind of stuff. $3,000 a month. They were promised this $1,200, which is a pittance of that. Right. Of course, if it's $1,200 for the man and the woman and $500 for a kid or whatever, then maybe you squeeze 1 month out of it. Yeah. Maybe. This thing's going to go on for 4 or 5 months. Whether the lockdown does or not, the ramifications, if they turned it on tomorrow, are going to be 4 or 5 months out. It's going to be a long, long time. The real issue is instead of taking all of that money to sow stability, like literally stability, so that families can be stable, so they know their bills are going to be paid for the next X number of months or whatever, taking that $2 trillion and doing that, and then figuring out, okay, big corporations, state and local governments, whatever it may be, down the road. But families and small businesses who, again, biggest employer in the country, they didn't take care of them whatsoever. So, something's got to be done about that.
Okay. We've got Ken Emmons. He is the CEO here at Crave News. And by the way, tell everybody where they can find Crave News.
Cravenews.com and a bunch of social media sites.
Yeah, and this is up and coming, folks. They're just doing incredible work right now, and you definitely want to keep your eye on this new network. But you, again, coming back to the premise of this whole discussion with you right now regarding the economy from a small business perspective, what do you see happening right now if the money doesn't flow as promised and nobody believes it will, and this thing goes on for another 30, 60, 90 days? What will be the impact to the economy, and for how long will that impact take hold?
Let me tell you, it's not when, it's happening now. Yeah. So it's not, when do I see something happening? The stuff is happening now. And look, I'm a Tennessee resident. I also come from a rural area of Southern Illinois, and I'm back there a lot. And these are the salt of the earth people. These are amazing, amazing people. I don't really identify with anything LA. But, LA has its own problems, with this whole $1,200 hoax. The folks back there, you've got people that can't pay their rent. They may already have a substance abuse problem. They are now having, in a lot of these rural areas, 150% increase in domestic violence problems. These people can't get their counseling, they can't get their meds. There's so many things they can't get, and they can't pay their bills. So when people can't pay their bills, the man of the house takes a hit to the ego, he gets violent and crazy, You're seeing suicides, murder-suicides. You're seeing record drug overdoses right now. This is just insane. So, I mean, to me, the government has, where they should, their first job is to take care of the people. That's their absolute first job, is to protect the people. So I really believe that, we're at least going to be 4 months out of April 1, which is a couple of days ago. We're going to be at least, or last week, we're going to be at least 4 months into this thing. And I feel like there's a really simple solution to this. They're talking about another $2 trillion bill, but they're talking infrastructure.
Yeah.
They're talking infrastructure, which means huge construction companies make a boatload of money, unions make a boatload of money. Chuck Schumer is on there talking about giving federal employees a 25% increase in wages and benefits, and these people already make way more than a person in the private sector does. So again, they're talking about an infrastructure bill, and maybe they'll say, oh, and by the way, we'll toss another $1,000 your way.
I want to get to your solution here because I think it's really, it's very appropriate, and it's something that needs to be discussed, and I want you to get into detail on it in just a half a second. But if we go back now 11 years ago, we have the economic stimulus bill from the Obama administration, the whole idea of green shoots coming out, the summer of recovery, and you got all of these different stimulus packages that went to the cronies, especially green cronies, right? You had Solyndra and others like that ultimately ended up going bankrupt. What we are looking at right now with these shovel-ready projects, and there is nobody in the government right now that's pushing back against a $4 trillion infrastructure, okay? This is a time for us to build roads, really? So talk to me a little bit about that and what we're looking at here today, 12 years later.
Building roads is all great. That's all fantastic. But the fabric of America are families. They are parents, they're the kids, they're the communities, and that kind of, and without them being stable and them having certainty of some sort that their bills are going to get paid, and I don't even care if they're at home and they're still getting paid. Their lives have been interrupted. And I'm not talking about, folks on the lower end of the economic scale and folks on the higher end. I'm talking about every single life has been put on hold. And it's wreaking, the instability and the uncertainty across the board is wreaking havoc. And that's something that you're finally starting to see, through these, domestic violence problems and the drug problems, suicide problems and overdoses and all the things that have just happened in the last 3 weeks. I mean, they're going through the roof. A friend of mine at the Sheriff's Association, he said, we can't handle it. He said, we couldn't handle it before. Now it's just off the hook.
Okay. I asked this of my guests the last few weeks, and I'm going to put the hat on you right now because I know you've got the solution to this. President Emmons.
Yeah, right. That'd be the day.
By executive order, you decree what?
You know what I think they should do? I mean, you take this 800-page bill that really was a farce. It was, hey, look here, I'm going to give you $1,200, and by the way, $1.7 trillion is going to go to special interest, and that's really where it went. Yeah, and by the way, they're already getting it. The people, the folks, back home, $1,200, they're going to be months if they ever even get it. If they ever get it.
Right.
I really believe there is a very simple solution. Actually, if you read my book, which you have, the
80%,
the common sense 80%.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to one single issue bill. In other words, single issue bills where you tackle one issue at a time. Again, like Puzder's article, last weekend, not that freaking hard to do this stuff. Again, to get that $1,200 to people, really simple. Go to the bank and get it. That's it. The bank settle up with the Fed every single night. Not that big of a deal. So, with this particular thing, I think there's a possibility of for fun. We're calling it the Common Sense Recovery Act, and it literally is $2 trillion.
Okay.
And here's what it does. This is going to sound ludicrous.
All right.
But it's only $2 trillion. And by the way, you heard the number today that they're talking about to get this whole thing dug out, right? What number did you hear?
I heard $20 trillion.
Yeah, I'd heard 12 over the weekend. You and I discussed that, which I thought was absurd. Now they're floating $20 trillion,
and
which is almost double.
And it's going to go up from there.
Yeah.
Our national debt was 23 before this all began.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Before any healing and real recovery can take place, there's got to be stable. People have got to be stable. They've got to feel secure. They've got to be certain. There's got to be something out there where they can hang their hat on, okay, I'm going to be all right, at least financially. Now, the husbands and wives, may want to still kill each other and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
finance, money is what drives a lot of that stuff. And if people know they're financially secure, so this is going to sound absolutely absurd because it's so simple, and it's $2 trillion. But if you took there's 120 or so million households in America. The average costs the average is $3,000 a month to
make ends meet.
To make ends meet. Some are $1,000 because they don't have a mortgage or whatever. Some are $15,000 because they live in LA or New York and they have a big mortgage and stuff like that. Doesn't make any difference. They've all been affected and all their lives have been put on hold. Everybody has.
Okay.
And it's creating insecurity amongst the upper middle class as well as it is the lower, folks who are on public assistance. So again, everybody is kind of equal and their life has been put on hold. If you, again, sound absurd, but if you literally, the government said the next $2 trillion, very simple 4-page bill, the next $2 trillion is going to go out to every single family, not in cash, where the government guarantees their rent and or house payment on their primary house. I don't care if your payment is $500 a month or if your payment is $10,000 a month. It's also going to cover, the government will stand good for your utilities, your car payments, things like that, things that just give them stability for 4 months. That gives somebody the ability to look out and go, okay, I'm good for 4 months, at least in my finances. That's going to sow a lot of certainty in the marketplace. And again, when you've got certainty, when you've got at least somebody that can take 1 foot and put it on rock. Right now, I think people are thinking their feet are on wet sand.
Yeah.
You take 1 foot, put it on a rock, and again, this costs $2 trillion. On top of that, you give them $1,500 in cash so that they've got all their expenses, little nickel and dime things that they've got to do. And you make that, like Puzder said, where you can go to the bank, get your $1,500, and the government stands good for the rest of it. And again, I'm not talking some Bernie Sanders horseshit pie in the sky thing. I'm talking about just the ability to give America a foundation so they've got 4 months that they know they can be stable.
Okay, I have some questions.
I assumed you would.
Because I saw your decree. You actually printed it up and it was all, Old English font and the whole, this is a real plan for you.
I'm actually, you know what it is for a lot of people? There are a lot of people that contributed to that, and these are a lot of big business people, small business people. These are people that are literally hurting and their employees are hurting.
Yeah, and Andy Posner, CEO, Karcher Enterprises, Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, and he's been on our show as well. Fantastic guy.
He, by the way, had nothing to do with drafting of this.
But he understands the small business community and the economics of all of this better than a lot of politicians today.
He understands it way, way better.
Yeah.
And again, if you look at that article he wrote last weekend, he understands the simplicity of that $1,200. How it should have been in the people's hands 2 or 3 days after that bill was passed. They should have already had this worked out with every bank where people could go in and do it.
So the first question, which I know, I'm asking a question from one of our members because I know that it's in their head, because when I looked at it, I immediately thought it as well from the standpoint of the acceptance of this by the American public. Why should the government be paying somebody's $10,000 mortgage?
You know what? Here's why. Everyone is hurting along the same line. And again, that part of it is so insignificant.
Okay.
In other words, if you take a look at the people that are over and above that $3,000 a month in total expenses, it's few and far between. So if you live in West Virginia and your house payment is, $300 a month and your utilities or whatever they are, you're suffering every bit as much. And the people living in another place where their house payment, out here, think about it. House payments are, $6,000, $8,000 a month.
Right.
Think about that.
Right.
And again, for the same style of living back there, same exact thing. So again, I think the idea of it is if you start putting qualifiers in it, and it's such a small percentage that have that amount of payment and that kind of thing, that it doesn't make any difference. What it would do, it would hold stuff up just like this bill is doing right now. They're holding up small businesses getting loans. They're holding up the people getting their $1,200. I think you just have to pass it and let it roll.
Okay.
And the way you do it is very simple. The banks or the people holding the mortgages, they turn the bill into to the federal government. They turn it in. So you don't hand somebody a check. So they're not going out and using it for booze and drugs and stuff like that, which, by the way, this is a down payment on my $1,200.
And this is
having you here on Whiskey Politics.
Cheers.
But you
3 quarts, ladies and gentlemen. This is an incredible rye.
That is amazing.
It really is very, very good.
Spider, you did it up right.
Nice job, Pat.
Yeah. So, so getting back to this again, if you take a look at the reason you just need to go across the way, just to make it simple. And again, so to review, if you are a landlord or you hold a mortgage on a place, you simply turn the bill in to the federal government. By the way, people will say, well, what about the fraud? Again, going back to that, you commit bank fraud, you got bigger problems than trying to scam the government out of $3,000 or $4,000.
Okay, so you're gonna play whack-a-mole for the fraud after the fact.
Why do you have to? Think about this. What's worse? Like, again, right now with this $1,200, what's worse? The entire American society crumbling? And it is. And again, you and I don't feel it because we live in LA, we're in this fantasy land of bullshit.
I'm seeing it personally, you're seeing it personally.
We are, but
cash flow is slowed tremendously right now.
It is, but it doesn't hit guys like us as hard as it hits everyone else. And back home for me is Tennessee and Southern Illinois, and it is hitting people so hard, not just financially, but again, the domestic violence, all the things that go with that. And people have no idea that, I mean, literally that train has barely left the station and we're seeing record numbers. We had a doctor on earlier today. This is just crazy. So again, they turn the bill into the federal government. Utility companies turn the bill to the federal government. I have tenants, for instance, they don't pay, I just say, you don't pay me, I turn my bill into the federal government. I can take it right to my bank. They can stand good for it. It's $2 trillion, and that solves everyone's financial problems across the board for the next 4 months. And at least they got a footing, because that's the real issue is not.
So this is government coming in and acting as a backstop for the economy to keep things as status quo before this took place.
It's more than that. It is the economy, but it is literally, it is families. It is people's sanity.
Okay, I agree with that 100%. I think everything is downstream from the economy.
It is.
Okay, because if you don't have the income, that's where you have families implode, suicides, drug abuse, violence, and everything else.
It is, but this is not like the late 2000s problem that we had, the collapse back then. This is people stuck in their homes by themselves, scared shitless.
Right.
That's what this is. This is fear.
Okay.
Now listen, fear, by the way, I really believe this. I think most people do. Fear drives dependence.
Yeah.
Fear drives
dependence. Well, that's my next question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, because are we setting a precedent right now? Listen, we are a free market economy. I like to think of us as a pseudo-capitalist economy because there are much too big government programs already that exist. So we can't say that we're just completely free market. And there's a good percentage of this population that like Bernie. They like Elizabeth. They like their big programs. Are you setting a precedence right now for essentially validating large government gravitas and
No, not at all. Not even close. Think about this. There's the money issue of it, the $2 trillion, which according to Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and these clowns is not a lot of money right now. $2 trillion is the financial side of this thing.
You really think it's only $2 trillion?
No, I'm talking about what it would cost to fund this bill.
For 4 months?
It is. I've done the math. I've had 2 economists do the math. It's $2 trillion. Take 120 million households times average of 3,000. And go back in and let's go look at the numbers.
You're averaging at 3,000, but there are so many more people that have,
you have to think about this.
I understand.
You
that's
and I
the
live
average.
in fantasy land out here where an average house.
But there are a lot
is,
of big cities in this country that have more expensive.
Okay, take a look at the map. Take a look at the Trump election map. Those big cities, that lit up in blue for the most part.
Okay.
Those big cities, there are a lot of people in them. But again, many of them not that expensive.
Right.
But again, most of the map lit up red is out in the country.
Okay.
It's out in flyover where I'm from.
Gotcha. So are you not concerned, though, that you're going to use this as if I was on the left and I was promoting essentially big government, totalitarian, communist, socialist policies.
But again,
isn't that basically justifying those policies right now, that it is big government that will save everybody, that we should trust in that, and everybody's taxes should be raised in the future to prevent this from happening again?
Not a bit. Again, think about this for a minute. This is partially a money thing, but this is not about people being dependent on the government, nor is it about starting a program or a department. You should never do that. This is about people who have been, their lives have been turned upside down because of the government, and the government had no plan for this. I'm talking both sides. I think both sides are equally as inept in this thing. Literally, their lives have been turned upside down and will be for at least the next 4 months, maybe beyond that. But for right now, if families and people, single parents, families, whatever it may be, old people, can at least know that for 4 months, they don't have to worry financially for a while about that stuff. That is going to give them some certainty that they wouldn't have otherwise. And it's a drop in the bucket compared to the unrest that's going to happen when the shit hits the fan. You saw it hit the fan on April 1st here. You saw people here in Los Angeles, and I know in Tennessee and Southern Illinois,
they're already
and Kentucky.
boarding up stores.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the unrest at home. Again, these people are uncertain. They're living in uncertainty. So the shit sort of hit the fan on April 1st when a lot of people out here couldn't pay. What do you think is going to happen on May the 1st? And now let's get into the boarding stuff up. You know, look, back home, people aren't stupid. They don't riot. Here, people riot like crazy. So they're boarding places up. They're boarding stores up here. A lot of people back home don't realize this. They're boarding stores up in Westwood, in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
They're boarding things up in Santa Monica, these really nice areas.
A lot of these business owners were around for 1992.
They saw it.
And that was just one court case.
Well,
Rodney
and again,
King.
this is Los Angeles, but again, New York. Go to Soho in New York right now.
Right.
Jump online, take a look. Soho, Midtown. People are literally boarding their storefronts up, and it's not because they're not coming in for a while. It's because they're expecting riots. What happens when people can't feed their family? What happens when people get violent because they can't get their meds? What happens when people can't see their therapist? They can't get the medical attention they want?
Yeah.
People go batshit crazy. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And it really comes back to, as you said earlier, to the economics of it. And if at least they know they've got 4 months where they don't have to worry about that, that's going to put some at least certainty in people for 4 months so they can figure it out. And if we get back to work in 2 months, great. If we get back to work in 4 months, great.
Well,
but at least it's a very inexpensive way to give America certainty without big corporations dipping their toe in it, without special interests in it, without places for rich people like the Kennedy Center getting $25 million and then laying off their orchestra, by the way.
Right.
Without NPR, who again, who doesn't love NPR, right? But again, it has nothing to, you know what I mean?
Fan,
I know, I'm just, but true. But let's say everyone loved NPR. If everyone loved NPR and they wanted the government to fund it, fantastic. But you know what? This is a bill. This last bill that was passed, this sham bill, was about, was sold as taking care of the American people. And the American people and their biggest employers, small businesses, got screwed royally. And again, with this hand, I'm going to give you $1,200. With this hand, we're giving all of our cronies a shitload of money, $1.7 trillion.
The fact that your bank has to bill the government for your mortgage, that nobody's going to be getting $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, whatever your monthly bills are if you're living large, I could see that as preventing some of the abuse. So that's definitely something. But let me ask you another level on this as well.
By the way, again, you really have to get out of the LA fairyland mindset. People don't have $20,000 mortgages. Not many people have $20,000 mortgages
I get
in Sevier County, Tennessee.
I get you. And Red County, America, if you take a look at it, I agree with you. But some of the largest cities that populate, especially around the coasts of the country, Florida, all along the East Coast, all the way up from Seattle down to San Diego, it's very expensive real estate.
It is, but again, think about this. When you take a look at the numbers, it is such a minute amount of people.
Comparison to the rest of the country, and that's how you would get your averaging out.
That's how you get the averaging out. And again,
I understand that.
Back in West Virginia, maybe, it's going to be, their payment is, I had a place in Tennessee one time, my payment was $283 a month. That's true.
That was my first, not to age myself, that was my first college semester's tuition.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, Dave, that it is, if you start looking at, oh my God, what if the rich people get their house? It's such a drop in the bucket compared to, the entire society being turned up on its end. And that's what's going on right now. And by the way, this bill that we're proposing has absolutely zero opportunity for any special interest stuff. It is the
Which
bill.
I love.
It's a single
Which I love.
issue bill. No fucking around with this thing.
Okay.
This is for the American people only.
Now, is this something that is separate to the gimmies, to the airlines, to the chain,
Has
supply
nothing
chains?
to do with that.
No.
Zero.
It's a separate thing. So the government will still be giving those gimmies to some of the infrastructure concerns like airlines that we need those,
Well,
right?
listen, that first bill has already passed.
Okay.
They've already
Yeah,
passed
but they're
it.
not done.
They're totally not done.
Right.
But think about this. That bill has already passed. And again, the people that are waiting on their $1,200 and probably will be for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
Think about this. A lot of these big corporations have either gotten their money or they've been assured government guarantees, so they've been able to tap their lines of credit to get the money. So they're already getting the benefit of that money. Billion-dollar companies. By the way, a lot of these CEOs, and I love big CEOs, nothing wrong with them, but these big CEOs were on CNBC last quarter. I was on with one of them, MSNBC,
Right.
Fox Business
making
News,
money.
bragging about record profits and the economy being great, and we're making so much money, we're taking it and we're buying stock back and we're doing it. They're bragging their asses off and they're getting $20 and $30 million bonuses, which I think is great. I mean, that's what America is. It's like, be successful and get rewarded for it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
But to go back to the government on this stuff later, I'm assuming they're not going to give their bonuses back or their profits back or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to the fact that somebody sitting out there in West Virginia or Texas or Arkansas, and they're waiting on their $1,200. Why these
And
guys
parts of
who are
California
bragging
as
about,
well. There's red
well,
state
of course, you go
California,
right up
right?
in Central. The best people in California
Yeah.
are right up in the Central Valley here.
There's a lot of people in
They're
Victorville
sitting
right
around
now that
waiting.
need that $1,200.
Yeah, and these are heart of America
So-
kind of people. By the way, but think about this.
Yeah.
They're waiting on that, and these guys who are bragging about making billions plus millions in bonus, and I'll go on social media, go look at some of their homes. So look at some of their second and third homes.
Yeah.
They were bragging, and now they're going to the government begging for money, while my friends out there wait for $1,200.
What other, before
crap.
I get back to reality, because this is President Ken Emmons.
Yeah,
decree,
right.
Okay.
Actually, I'm voting for you.
So
Dave Sussman for president. I know you were born in the UK, but
I was
you know
born
what?
in England. I can't. I'm not officially allowed to run for president.
Could I
of the
see your
United
birth
States.
certificate? See, I think you're trying to use that to get out of it. I'm a Dave Sussman
You know what?
birther.
A couple more of these, and I'll be going back to my hello. All right. So
I about spit 3-quart out of my nose.
that's dangerous today. It's dangerous. Okay, so before we get back to the reality, the hardened reality that we're dealing with right now, what other elements of this decree, what other ideas do you think that the government should be implementing right now?
One thing that they've got to do, and by the way, this is what's one of the big issues that's causing a lot of that unrest, is that people are now worried about getting their credit screwed up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who live paycheck to paycheck miss their rent on April 1st, or they have roommates who miss their rent on April 1st, and they're all on the hook, and they're all on the credit thing together. They need to enact something that's really solid for everyone across the board, where credit bureaus, who are some of the biggest lobbyists, by the way, huge lobbyists, and they're all
Talking
big
about
part of big.
Experian, Equifax, TransUnion.
These folks,
The big
yeah.
guys, okay.
Yep. There's got to be at least a 4-month moratorium on anything negative going to your credit.
Okay.
Because listen, people survive. It's amazing to me that America is built on credit.
Yeah.
And you had a couple of things going on here, by the way. A lot of people don't really realize this. Yes, the economy was going great. And I think a lot of it was Trump euphoria, because we trust him as a business guy, to keep it moving, to do the right things, to get rid of some of the unnecessary regulations.
Is that a new cologne by Trump?
What's that?
Trump euphoria?
Trump euphoria.
Smell the essence.
It's made with Black Panther tooth.
Black Panther. It's 70%. What was that line?
There's Ron Burgundy, right?
Ron Burgundy. It's 70%. No, I forgot the.
It's made from a Black Panther's left testicle or something like that. Yeah.
It's 60% real panther, 100%. I forget now.
Hard telling.
It's been 10 years.
Nowadays,
Anyway,
a lot of
go ahead.
artificial fillers. Anyway, where are we going with that,
Trump
Dave? By the way?
euphoria.
Yeah, so I mean, the economy's rocking and rolling. So everybody's having great time and having fun, and credit's getting easy again. Interest rates are down. So again, like you saw during the last collapse, building up to the last collapse, not during the last, but building up to the last collapse, you see people are now. They've taken almost all the equity out of their homes.
Yeah.
They've racked their credit cards up big because there's never going to be a day of reckoning. Their consumer debt is through the wazoo, so they're borrowing money to buy boats and this and that and whatever. student debt, these poor students that are trying to graduate this year, they can't graduate, yet they're still having to foot the bill. You've got all this stuff going on. So the credit bureaus have got to, have a 4-month stay where at least during this time, because we're in actual crisis. The collapse last time wasn't a real crisis. This is a crisis.
Well, it's a different kind of crisis. I think a lot of homeowners that lost their homes in 2009 will argue with that. But at the same time,
they will. But right now, you have got a psychological thing going on here in the States that you didn't have last time. You have people scared to death because of this coronavirus thing.
Absolutely agree.
You have so much different. Yeah, a lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people, and it was very difficult for people.
You're going to have a PTSD from this.
They are.
Yes.
And look, we all had a tough time during the last collapse. Everybody did.
Right.
I mean, very few people didn't.
I got caught up
but
in it.
Yeah. And all of us that had real estate did.
I bought my home in 2008 and ended up, it was
But
a
you know
disaster.
what? We knew there would be a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
With this, where you have all the elements, it's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
People over leveraged, easy credit leading up until recently. People buying pretty much anything they wanted, anytime they wanted, government programs through the wazoo. I mean, it's the perfect storm. And now we're stuck. And it's not because people over leverage necessarily that we're stuck right now. If the economy was still rolling along, it'd be different. But the government shut everything down. They shut it all down. And it's only as they would say, only $2 trillion to correct this, at least for 4 months.
So one of the issues that, going back to the small business owners, and this is the reality aspect of all of this right now, a lot of small business owners pay into insurance programs. So when there is a natural disaster or something that impacts their business, they get paid, right? And I've just read a report over the weekend, one of the financial journals said that insurance companies are now going to be denying insurance claims on this because it is a national situation. So people have been paying into an insurance program, and the insurance companies are about to now knock people over the head as well.
It's happening already. Think about it. So again, these small businesses that can't make claims, they're the ones who also can't make their payroll. They're having to let people go. And these are good, these are great, solid, I mean, think about it. Restaurants right down the street here, mom and pops. I'm not talking, I know the Cheesecake Factory, they're, that's a whole different thing, but even they can't pay their rents. Now you think about mom and pop with the little Mexican restaurant down the road here, and they live paycheck to paycheck. They live week to week.
40%, that's just today's number, 40% of restaurants that are closed today will not reopen.
I heard worse than that even. I heard it was like in the high 40s.
They're going to go way up.
Yeah. So again, a lot of this could be corrected, at least temporarily, with a great Band-Aid by this $2 trillion single issue, no negotiating bill. And it's very, very easy to execute. Let me tell you how bad this is. So they did the first one, the first bill, which was really a sham. They made all these promises. People are waiting for their $1,200. Small businesses are waiting for their one-page application that has now turned into about 15 pages, plus a bunch of supporting documentation. Plus, they're not processing them. You've got that. But then they said, well, we're going to come in with COVID-4, which is going to be their next stimulus bill. They're not talking about money for the American people. They're talking about infrastructure, which means huge multi-billion-dollar construction companies get shitloads of business, massively high-margin business. Unions make a fortune off of this
thing. And they're not going to RFP that out. That's going to go to all of their cronies, requests for proposals.
Of course.
Right? It's going to go to their cronies.
Well, it always does. Even in RFPs, it goes to their cronies. That's where it goes. So again, this is an opportunity for the American people to stand up and say, I've had enough of this shit. Just take care of me once. Take care of me once above NPR and your cronies and their big corporations and that kind of one time. And this, it's never in our lifetime, been more critical. And I don't even know in the whole history of America if something like this has been more critical.
Yeah. You had something in your book, which we talked about last time we had you on the show, the Common Sense Majority 80%, which is fantastic. And it's a bestseller.
Thank you.
It's a bestseller at Amazon.com, folks.
And a very obscure list.
Ken Emmons. You had something in there that we talked about regarding the line item veto. Okay? Isn't now a perfect example that this is needed more than any time? I mean, this is an argument that's been going back since the 80s, since Ronald Reagan's time. Remember Newt Gingrich in the House of Representatives in '94 were arguing it with the contract with America. That President Trump can take a look at a stimulus bill like this for $2 trillion and say, what the F is this? Kennedy, get this out of here and get that out of there. And
Here's the thing. Not only should that have been done, even if it was non-procedural but ceremonial, when he was in the White House putting his big fat signature on that thing, he should have just stopped and said, you know what, folks? This bill is about taking care of the people. Let me just point a few things out. I'm being forced to sign this, but let me point a few things out. This big corporation's getting that. This one's getting that, and go all.
Why didn't he do it?
And go all the way.
If any president would have done it, it would have been Trump.
Yeah,
Why didn't he?
And again, I love him. I love his policies. I occasionally get a kick out of his tweets. And go all the way down. Spend 30 minutes going down every line and saying. And by the way, most people don't even know what the Kennedy Center is. They don't know that it's a place for rich people to go to watch the symphony.
Right.
I've been there a million times. Not a rich person, but I mean, I've been there a million times. It ain't a cheap place to go. And they're getting $25 million to save. They got it specifically to save their jobs. After they got the money, they let go of all their employees.
Yeah, it's devastating. And the fact that there was no outcry from D.C., from the politicians that passed this thing. Do you think there would be an appetite to find some, let's say and I have no idea what the hell's going to happen in November anymore, but let's say the Republicans take back Congress. Do you think they could push through a line item veto from this, using this as a justification?
Here's the thing, is the American public has been, they're not paying attention. Most of them wouldn't even know what it is. Yeah. They wouldn't know what a line item veto is. But they do know when they're getting fucked out of their $1,200,
right.
And they do know when rich people are getting a boatload of money that they really don't need. Mm-hmm. They do know that. And they do know that an 800-page bill can't be read in 12 or 14 hours. Mm-hmm. They know that. So, this, like I said, is that one opportunity, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in America for real Americans, not the DC elite, not the crazy billionaire elite, real Americans to stand up and say, I demand this. Yeah. You owe me 4 months. And they do owe them 4 months. I mean, listen, whether we get taxed for it later or not, we will, of course. But at the end of the day, you and I have walked down the street here in Los Angeles. I was down the other day, having, of course, a very vacant downtown. I'm down there the other day, and we're literally eating Mexican food off of a side of a construction truck, and three or four people go in there digging through trash. These are our brothers.
Yeah.
We owe it to take care of each other.
That epidemic itself was devastating before all of this. So let me bring it back.
It was, but now in particular, we owe it to, because they're going to turn every single family into that, or they're going to turn them into disasters.
That's my question for you.
We had a marriage counselor, a family, sex, and marriage counselor on earlier today on the show.
Yeah.
What is going on out there is unbelievable.
I picked the wrong time to be single right now. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Tinder's blowing up, man.
I don't know. How can you meet people? I'm not on Tinder, but how do you even meet people today? It's awful.
I don't know.
Anyway, let's talk. Okay, so bringing it back to I love your idea. I love the idea of what you're talking about, if it can be implemented correctly, and that's why we wanted to talk about this. But okay, the hard-nosed reality is that we are now dealing with COVID-4. We are dealing with ongoing stimulus packages and crony capitalism and everything else that we're talking about right now. Optimistic, pessimistic? Where are we in 4 or 6 months from now?
Listen, if we can get a bill like this passed, where it's a total no bullshit bill, I mean, literally, it takes care of the American people only, and it's very easy to get it taken care of. Again, where landlords or mortgage holders can turn the bill into the bank. Again, the banks, whether you're a small bank or big bank, they settle up with the feds every night. The feds are printing money all day and all night. Where do you think this 20 trillion or 10 trillion or whatever it's eventually going to cost, where do you think it's coming from? We don't have it. They're printing the money. That's where it's coming from. There's nothing backing that money up. So for us, it could be a $2 trillion bill or a $5 bazillion bill, makes no difference. But right now, there's a chance to take care of the people. But it's got to be done in a bill that is 4 pages, 2 or 3 pages, 4 pages at the most, very simple, and people have got to have access to it right now. So again, what we're talking about is something that would cover all your basic household expenses, rich, poor, whatever. Again, way more people out there hurting than there are on this end of it.
Let's assume DC hears this, okay, and this is going to be published up on Ricochet, and a lot of people in Washington, D.C. in the halls of power may be hearing this because of
I'll tell you what, here's what they're going to hear. Whether they hear this or not, they are going to see problems that they have not even thought about in their districts. They're seeing people that, I mean, they're not,
This is where I want to go with you.
These
What are we looking at what are we now? April, beginning of April. What are we looking at in July?
You know what, if we don't get a bill like this passed, where at least people don't have financial security and stability, knowing that they've got that where they have access now, not some bullshit, I'll give you $1,200 in 2 weeks, oh wait, 5 months. Something like this that covers them from April 1 all the way through the end of July. Again, whether we get turned back onto business today or July 1st. That's going to have to happen. If we don't get something like that done, I mean, you're going to see, look, you're going to see rioting this month. I really believe.
You believe it this month?
I believe
civil unrest will happen soon.
I believe by May the 1st.
We're second week in April right now filming this.
Yeah, and I believe by May the 1st, you're going to see the shit hit the fan. That's why they're already boarding up buildings here.
Yeah.
And again, I would not blame people for rioting. This is one of those times where the government has just overstepped it and paid zero attention. Literally, they've hopped over the American people and said, let me take care of big corporations, let me take care of, other politicians that are downstream, and they've not done anything for the American people. And on top of that, for that paltry $1,200, $1,200 is a lot of money, but when a household, it costs them $3,000 a month to operate it, and let's say they get $3,000 combined for 1 month, we've already been in this for a month.
Yeah.
We've missed. I mean, people have missed April 1st.
Are you
rent.
saying that civil breakdown, which you say could start to occur this month in different cities around the country?
Why would it not?
What is the trajectory of that over the next few months?
I have no idea. But the Rodney King verdict, which affected a very small part of the population,
Right.
really overall. Very passionate, but very small part of the population, and mainly here in Los Angeles. That is nothing compared to people sitting at home in the Ozarks, in the Smokies, wherever. These are good, solid American people that are having actual problems. None of this, oh my God, what happens if the Kennedy Orchestra doesn't get paid? None of that shit.
Yeah.
This is real serious.
I need food for my babies.
I need food for my babies. I need to provide for my wife and kids. I need to provide for my parents. There's all these things.
Yeah. And whatever your opinion is of the Rodney King verdict, and we can have a discussion on that separately, there was certainly some injustice with that. But at the same time, there was passion there based upon anger. This is going to be a fear-based situation.
It already is a fear-based thing. And you know what? Yes, they're boarding up the stores and things like that. I'll tell you who I feel bad for, the politicians. Because
I wouldn't want to be a politician right now.
No, because listen.
Whatever you're going to do, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. And that bill, the fact that every single House member, now a lot of them regret it, every single House member and every member of Senate that was present voted for this thing is a disgrace. And if I was them, that's what I would fear. Because, you've already got people going to congressmen's homes, to senators' homes, to the mayor's home in Los Angeles. And this mayor out here is clueless. He lives high on the hog. Yeah, totally clueless. Lives high on the hog, totally out of touch with reality.
I don't live in LA County, but I catch some of the news, and I look at him like a deer in headlights looking at the teleprompter.
Yeah.
I mean, at least New York's got Cuomo, whatever you think of his politics, which is separate, okay? He at least is acting in a leadership capacity right now.
Yes. And again, you have politicians, especially in California, so out of touch. But a lot of these folks, even from back home, they get into D.C. and they get sucked into that D.C. microcosm.
Right.
And they literally don't think about, what about the people back home? What about these people that are already having addiction issues? They're already having problems paying their rent. They're already having problems with their kids having addiction issues. All these issues that they have. And that's just talking about hardship cases. Think about just regular people.
I want to get your last thought here, because we can go on forever on this, and this is fascinating. And last time I had you on the show, we were talking from a political perspective of things. And for about 3 or 4 months before this happened, on different shows, I had Bo Snerdley, Rush Limbaugh's guy.
Love Bo.
He was on the show
down at Mar-a-Lago with him in December. That guy is one of the greatest guys ever.
And I asked him, I said, you're obviously very optimistic about the election in November. President Trump's economy is on fire. But I'm looking at the out of the left periphery right now, and I'm seeing this COVID thing happening in China. This is a few months ago. I said, what would a black swan event like a pandemic do to the economy? And he says, we'll get through it. What is your impression right now? And I know politics seem cheap right now, but we do have a national election coming up in 6 months, whatever it is. What are you looking at?
First of all, let me say that you were the first one to really, of credibility, political credibility, to see this coming. You were one of the very few hosts that saw this coming. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it several months ago. What do I see right now? I don't know. I see Trump up there doing the best that he can. I also see him surrounded by a lot of people who have been in the government for a long time. So I don't really know. I don't know.
I think none of us know.
Yeah, it's going to be
It's unprecedented, isn't it?
It is absolutely unprecedented.
Yeah,
Again, if these politicians have just got to one time without trying to get a bunch of stupid shit packed into a bill that has nothing to do with the issue at hand,
and that's anger.
One time, they've got to get a bill passed that takes care of nothing but the American people directly and swiftly. No bullshit.
Trump looks tired right now, doesn't he? And
Dude,
wouldn't we all be?
He's like, what is he, 70-some years old?
Yeah.
The guy doesn't sleep but 3 or 4 hours a night anyway.
Yeah.
He's spinning a lot of plates. I mean, he's spinning a lot of plates. And you think about, leading up to this, whether you like him personally or not, the guy is an Energizer bunny. The guy got a lot done.
What grade would you give him right now from handling this?
I've watched about every other day of those things. I give him a B+, I think.
Okay.
I mean, this is a very difficult situation to be in.
I asked the same question to Stephen Moore last week. He gave him a B.
Yeah.
That's Trump's economic advisor.
Yeah. I give him a B+. One thing I do wish he would do on the COVID shows, as I call them, bring some people in who aren't government people. I mean, I know the little guy, the doctor, what's his name? Fauci. I know he's very respected and things like that, but the thing
he had some company guys last week.
Yeah, but again, these are guys that are going to be getting a lot of this money, this stimulus money.
And Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy.
Well, Mike's different. I was just texting him yesterday.
Yeah,
Mike is
super nice guy.
He is a great guy. He is a great American.
How did he react to the way that the media treated him?
I don't know. We didn't really talk about that. We were actually talking about pillows of all things and media. Okay. And I saw him at the Governors Association conference here several weeks ago. Mike is a great American. He's the kind of guy that Trump needs on his cabinet. You take a look up there at the COVID show, you take a look at the cabinet, and these are people. The first thing I do is I look to see, have they been in the government before?
Yeah.
And most of these people have been there forever. So they're taking care of everyone who's there with them. Lindell is a whole different animal. And by the way, Lindell almost ran for Congress up in Minnesota. He is a gem.
Yeah.
He is a gem. There's a guy who hit the lowest of lows.
I know.
Lowest
Crack addict.
of lows.
Yeah.
And he came back through the roof. And he's giving
I
back.
talked about it last
he's
week.
He's amazing.
And we've had him on our show on the red carpet at different events, and I'll have to connect to him again because I want to get him on the show here. He may end up being Minnesota governor.
You know what? I hope that he takes a Senate seat. We need real leaders to step up in the Senate right now. We don't have many there.
So
he would be.
You think he can get a Klobuchar seat, or
I don't even know when the next who's up there in Minnesota.
I forget the
but
other
that
person.
guy, I will tell you, is as solid as a rock.
Yeah.
And he has seen everything. He has been successful. He has been a drug addict. He has recovered. He has gotten faith. The guy is amazing.
And he's now printing up 50,000 face masks a day instead of pillows. And the NBC and the ABC and the mainstream media are laughing at him on Twitter.
Yeah, which is crazy. Again, what do they want? What the fuck do these people want?
Not only that,
literally, what do they want?
Show me one face mask that you knitted for the public. ABC News, whatever it is.
Why bash someone like that?
It's incredible
what has
to
he
me.
done? Here's a guy that literally is giving, I'm sure his finances are okay, but here's a guy that's his business, you talk about interrupted business, just stopped.
Yeah.
And what's he doing? He's not going, what am I going to do? He's saying, what can I do to help? And he's giving, he's making these masks. And if he says he's making 50,000, he's the kind of guy that's probably making 100,000 of them.
Yeah.
And he's not going to gouge it. He's going to get them out there to the people who need them.
Ken Emmons, tell everybody about Crave News and tell everybody about your incredible book and where they can find it.
Crave News. So as you know, you've seen this from day one.
Yeah.
Crave News is a news network that we think is a long time coming. It's aimed at.
I met this man 3 or 4 years ago, and he was talking about it then.
That's crazy.
Amazing, and now it's a reality.
Yeah, you know what? It's fun stuff. We've kind of felt like over the years, no matter what your news preference is,
Yeah.
everybody on the cable news side, it's old people news, and I love it. I mean, Fox is a babysitter for old people. So is CNN, just a little bit younger. You can tell, by the way, by their advertisements. I mean, it's
The walk-in bathtubs.
the walk-in bathtub, the catheters, the buy gold, you get a second mortgage. And nobody call it. What do you call the old people mortgage? Get a whatever that reverse mortgage.
Reverse mortgage.
I mean,
Yeah.
mesothelioma. I've literally, they make having a catheter look like so much fun. I just feel like buying a
I had
package
no
of
idea
them
what
just
a
for
catheter
fun.
was until Fox News.
Yeah.
That was a rude
I
awakening.
loved it when you demonstrated one on your show a couple of months ago.
Oh, you
was,
like that?
That was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
You would do anything to
Thank
sell.
you. Did you hear the thud?
I heard that. I heard the scream first. But nobody's really servicing the 18 to 34-year-old market, and where you can sit down, have a drink. Like if you take a look at our studios, we've got a main news set. You've got a set over there. It's kind of a loft kind of thing. And you can sit down after hours like we're doing.
I'm going to take
have
over
a
the
drink.
ivories here a little bit.
Absolutely.
This is perfect. This
And,
is a real working piano, folks.
And talk how you want to talk. I mean,
Yeah.
talk literally as though you're
How
talking to
people
friends.
talk.
Talk how people talk. The same
Yeah.
way Trump talked. Again,
Yeah.
it's not a right or left thing. We bash
Right.
Trump as hard as well, maybe not quite as hard as Chuck Schumer, but we bash them all that need to be bashed. And we also applaud those that need to be applauded. Some are the same in the same day. Some need bashed in the morning and applaud in the afternoon. We're not all politics. We're sports. We're e-gaming. We're everything that 18 to 34
I
crowd
sat up
wants.
there and I wasn't very vocal, but you were talking about the social aspect of all of this and how it's impacting dating and sexual relationships. And I mean, there was some pretty hardcore stuff. You had a doctor on relationships on there talking about how to get through this. I mean, that's fascinating to me right now, the social aspect of all of this. So yeah, it isn't just politics or it's everything that I guess is the human condition that we are all facing every day.
Here's the thing, Andrew Breitbart, again, I don't care what your politics are, but he said it perfectly.
Yep.
Politics is downstream from culture, and it really is. If you don't get culture, politics runs very thin to you, and that's one thing that's happened. So our job is to meet people at culture. That's why I've got a young staff here, and it really is to take news and politics, but mostly news, and meet them at culture. So go to culture and then bring them up to speed on actual
and that's
news.
how you educate the masses from the standpoint of thinking to themselves, oh, I have no interest in politics. And all of a sudden they're starting to think about issues and how it relates to politics without, I've got an analogy that I use in business. My job isn't to lead the horse to water. It's to allow the horse to realize on its own that it's thirsty.
Right. That's great analogy.
Yeah. And your book. Where can
The
people
Common
find your
Sense
book?
80%. It was one of those things. I'm sitting on the beach house in Asia, and came to me. It's take a look at.
It's got a beach house in
I don't
Asia.
have I rent it on occasion. I don't have one. I wish I did. I would be over there 24/7. But you wouldn't see me here doing news. Sitting there and talking politics and watching politics, and one of my co-founders, Scott Fry, who's a big big in the entertainment and the animation side of this business, also very politically astute, and we were over there talking, and we're watching politics going crazy. A lot of it came from the Obama-McCain thing, where you're sitting there watching these two guys that should be both totally unelectable, and you're watching both, whether you like McCain or don't like McCain or like Obama or not, these people had zero, reason to be president. And we're watching the dysfunction in politics, and watch that thing go down. Then you watch a Mitt Romney thing go down. You watch all this stuff happen, and it really is a product of people not getting real news. They're not getting actual facts. They're getting headlines. They're getting, little sound bites and that kind of stuff, but they're not getting real news because there's no fun in real news. The Daily Show was kind of fun years ago, but there's no fun
Jon
in
Stewart was
actual.
good.
John was great.
Yeah.
He even got fed up with it.
Yeah.
But nobody was having fun and having, the tagline for this is real news, no bullshit. So it's Crave News, real news, no bullshit. And really that's what people want. They want to have a discussion like we're having. And that's what the whole network was built on.
And the Common Sense 80%.
Common Sense 80% is just basically taking politics down to its absolute bare core. It's stripping away, if the analogy was an old house, it's stripping away the bricks, stripping away everything, getting it down to the studs and figuring out how do we build it back up so that DC is a lean, mean machine. so that it operates like it should, so that we don't have these $2.2 trillion idiotic bills that take care of everyone except the people that need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
And people can find it?
They can find it on Amazon, Amazon.com.
All right, Kent Emmons, thank you so much.
Dave,
congratulations.
great to have you with
Social
us.
distancing? No.
Oh, that's right. I will
we're gonna
elbow
do
you.
this. There we go.
Oh, you got it.
All right, so thank you, everybody, and we'll be back again real soon here at Whiskey Politics. Cheers, and thanks again to Pat
Salud.
Benatar and her incredible husband. What is it,
Spider and Morris Nutt.
Yeah, 3-chord, and
Yeah.
it is an incredible ride.
Yeah.
We'll be back again real soon at Whiskey Politics. Cheers.